Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 941, October the 28th, 2019, Tuesday. Thank you so much for tuning in. Okay, we have a lot to talk about today, so let's go ahead and get to it. Let's see here. So there was a short interview that Attorney General Barr did with a media organization. I can't remember who, but it's some media organization. It's been picked up by quite a few other news organizations, and now it's being reported on, and you can watch the video. Many of you have probably seen it. It's not a long interview, but I think it's a good interview. There's a couple things that Barr says that I really like, and there's one thing he says that makes me scratch my head. But anyway, so we have this interview with Barr, and he says that that John Durham is the prosecutor in this case, not him. He said this is Durham's, investigation, and he said that he will get to the bottom of things, and he also said that once the investigation is complete, that he's going to let the chips fall where they may. Those are two very good things. He also says that Durham is making great progress. This is also very good. Now, the idea that this is Durham's investigation and it's not his investigation, yeah, I mean, that's true. It is Durham's investigation. But clearly, Attorney General Barr is pretty involved in it because he also has been visiting these foreign countries, opening the door for Durham. Going to England, going to Australia, going to various places, say, hey, my prosecutor is working on this. The president's called you and asked you to cooperate with me, and now I'm asking you to cooperate with my prosecutor, Mr. Durham. So when he comes here, please show him the available documents you have. Cooperate with him in his investigation. It's very important to me and to the president. So, and also, of course, we know that Barr went to Italy twice. He made a personal phone call back in June. He visited there in August, and he visited there again in September. And the second time he was there, he was with Durham. So obviously he's more personally involved in it probably than he wants to let on. But he did say one other thing too. So that's all good. I'm very happy with all of that. But he also said that Christopher No Shit Sherlock Ray, the director of the FBI, and with her, is cooperating and is doing a great job of cooperating, and that really made me scratch my head because it's like this can't be the same Christopher No Shit Sherlock Ray that the rest of us have been watching for the past couple of years since he's been appointed, because he's done everything in the world to block certainly the Congress. He didn't cooperate with them at all on anything in this investigation. So I don't know. Maybe he's acting differently with Barr and Durham. Maybe he found religion a couple months ago. I don't know exactly what's going on there, but it makes me scratch my head. And although I'm overwhelmingly optimistic with Barr and Durham. I think they're legit. I think we are going to get the truth out of them. But of course, it is the swamp, and both these guys do come from the Department of Justice. So I think we still have a little bit of skepticism, just so we don't totally get drug into the weeds. But I'm still overly optimistic. I'm very optimistic that we'll get to the bottom of it and people will be held accountable. But I still reserve a little room for skepticism in there because we are dealing with the swamp. But Durham, Barr is a very, very smart character. I mean, he's very smart in a lot of ways. Obviously, he's been involved in the CIA, former Attorney General, been involved in the Department of Justice for a long time. He lives basically within the District of Criminals. He still has contact with a lot of people there. He's been watching this very closely since the beginning, just like all of us have. He knows the ways of the swamp. He understands the politics. He understands the culture around the country. He understands the nature of politics in the country, the way the country is divided today. He understands all of that, I think. And I think a lot of that has to do with the way he's doing it. If you remember, I've said in several videos in the past that, following the breadcrumbs and putting this crime together and holding the people accountable, that's probably the easy part. The hard part is, how do you do it? How do you do it? How do you take down these people and leave the country intact? That is the difficult part. And I think this has a lot to do with why Barr is using the language he's using and doing it the way he's doing it. I think he actually does understand what the repercussions would be if, in fact, they do indict all these high-level people who are generally believed to be Democrats or friendly to Democrats or opposed to Trump or what have you. So I think he understands the cultural and political situation in the country. He understands how sensitive this investigation is and all the particulars of it as well. So, I mean, that's why I say I think we have to give him some benefit of doubt. And keep in mind what Barr was doing before, when he left the government and went to work for private corporations as a sort of freelance attorney. Remember what Barr was being paid a lot of money to do. Barr was being paid large amounts of money by huge corporations. Large amounts of money by huge corporations to provide them with legal defense from the government. He was the guy that large corporations hired to help them fend off attacks and lawsuits from the government. Okay, so Barr definitely understands not just the Attorney General job and the FBI job and all that. He understands the really deep workings of the Department of Justice and how they go after corporations, how they do these investigations and all this stuff. He is really, really smart and knows a lot about how the government operates, on a very large and deep scale. He definitely is a guy who has that type of knowledge, and that's why large corporations hired him to protect them from the government. So he what I'm saying is Barr understands both sides. He's been on both sides. He's been in the government. He's been in the private sector defending private corporations from the government. So he knows both sides, how the game is played. And we just saw him give that speech on the culture. He understands the highly charged political nature of things today, party politics and all this stuff. So I think he has a very good grasp of everything overall. And maybe that's why he's treating or characterizing No Shit Sherlock Ray the way he is. It's kind of like what he did with Rodenstein when he came out and had that press conference after the Mueller report came out. And of course he had Rodenstein behind him. And that was basically to say, hey, he supports me. Rodenstein supports me. And Rodenstein probably didn't support that at all. Based on what we know about Rodenstein's role that he played in the coup, he wouldn't have supported Barr. But something got him to stand behind Barr and show his support. And I don't think it was voluntary. I think Barr used some sort of leverage on Rodenstein to force him to essentially lend his support. Didn't have to say anything. He just had to stand there and have Barr's back, so to speak. So I think Barr understands something about, like I said, it's not so, the hard part is not figuring out what happened and prosecuting the bad guys. The hard part is how do you do it without turning the country inside out. And I think that this weighs a lot on his decision on how he's going about it and how he words things. When he's asked about things, how he answers these questions. So I think we have to feel pretty optimistic, but I think we also have just a bit of skepticism because we are talking about the swamp. So I remain mostly positive that we're going to get to the bottom of this, as he says, and the chips will fall where they may. In other words, people will be prosecuted if they're committed crimes. I believe, pretty much in that, but I still have a bit of skepticism because I'm naturally a skeptic, especially when it comes to the deep state. Now, Pelosi came out today. A lot of people are suggesting that maybe she had too much to drink before she came out and made this statement because now she's actually muddied the waters and confused things even more. So she comes out and makes a statement that she will have a full House vote on an impeachment inquiry on Thursday, likely on Thursday. That will be this week, and she said likely Thursday. She promises more transparency. And so she makes a statement, and it's not real clear exactly what the hell she's talking about. But I think just on its face, I think we can claim a victory here because it's clear that the reason she's doing this, and she's saying, yes, we have to have more transparency. We'll explain what the procedures are, and the president will have the option to defend himself or whatever. So clearly, what this tells us is that the raid on the skiff, on the Bug-Eyed Fool's secret Star Chamber hearing, that raid, as well as Lindsey Graham's letter and his statement, as well as all the public pressure that Pelosi's feeling. I imagine lots of Democrats are getting phone calls in their districts and I imagine that that's being passed along to her. Her members are taking a beating on this, and I think it was political pressure that forced her to capitulate and move to a more open process. So I think we can look at that as a win. Clearly, it's not something she wanted to do. So I think that that's a win. Public pressure has forced Nancy to move off her position. But it gets even more confusing because, again, her statement was pretty confusing, and she may have been a little drunk. It's hard to say. People are suggesting maybe she had too much to drink before she made her statement. But after she makes her statement, because it's not totally clear, it's kind of confusing, as she's walking down the hallway, a reporter, and this is caught on film, a reporter asked her to clarify a couple things and about the impeachment hearing, and Nancy spins around, looks at the reporter, and she goes, "It is not an impeachment hearing. It's only a resolution, not an impeachment resolution." So that only confused it even more. It's not an impeachment hearing. It's only a resolution. It's not an impeachment resolution. So it's, again, it's very confusing. A lot of people think she may have been drinking before she did this, and so maybe her mind's jumbled up. She gives a statement which is confusing, then she's asked to clarify, and it only gets more confusing. So we still really don't know exactly what the hell she's talking about. I'm not so sure she knows what she's talking about. But clearly, something's going to happen on Thursday with a vote. It's not going to be, it's obviously going to be some sort of a resolution, but, you know, a resolution for what? They've already started an impeachment inquiry. What, are they going to get a resolution to have an impeachment hearing? I mean, you don't do that. You just have a vote for an impeachment hearing. I mean, a vote for a resolution to have an impeachment hearing? I mean, this is nutty. So no one can figure out what she's talking about, but clearly I think it's a victory. She's being forced to move off her position and open it up and have a public hearing. I'm pretty sure it's going to be a public hearing from this point forward. The president will probably be able to have a counsel there now about as far as being able to call the witnesses and cross-examine and access to documents and previous testimony and all this stuff. I'm not so sure. We really aren't going to know until Thursday. But I think, for the most part, I think it's good. I think it does show that some pressure has been brought to bear and she's been forced to move off her position. But keep in mind, we are talking about Madam Botox and the Bug-Eyed Fool and the demo commies and the Deep State and the Lawfare Group. These are not straight shooters. These are crooks. These people are hell-bent on impeachment. So I fully expect them to continue their chicanery, their parliamentary tricks, their tactics may change, but I think that to believe that suddenly Pelosi and Schiff are going to have this normal, open impeachment process where all these things are afforded to the president and to the Republicans, I think would be maybe a little optimistic. I personally cannot believe that this is just suddenly going to become a big open hearing and it's all going to be good. No, I think it's still going to be done. There's a lot of trickery going on here. She's been forced to move off her position, not because she wanted to, but because she was forced to. She's not going to give up the whole thing. She's going to do probably the absolute minimum that she has to do to be able to continue the hearings without it being an official impeachment. She's going to have to open it up a little bit, but not enough to allow Republicans to destroy these bad witnesses and fake witnesses that we hear is happening behind closed doors. So I think that the games will continue, the trickery will continue, the fuckery, if you will continue. And I don't expect any major thing other than it's now going to be more open. So we'll just have to see what happens on Thursday and what comes out of that. But I'm not terribly optimistic. And Madam Botox is so drunk she probably won't even remember what she said on Thursday. Here's a couple really good stories here for us. A federal judge has reversed a lower court ruling against Nick Sandman's case against Washington Post for the defamation case. If you remember, several months back, Adam Sandman, the kid from Northern Kentucky, who was clearly mistreated badly by Washington Post. He's a minor. They targeted him. Once they knew that their story was false, they never really came back and corrected it or exonerated him from the claims they made against him. Keep in mind, he's a minor. Certainly, they did defame him. I mean, there's no other way that you can look at it. And I remember that day when the lower court said, no, the case cannot move forward. It's not good enough for a defamation case. You know, I thought that's bizarre. I could not believe it. Obviously a bad judge. So I'm very happy that Sandman's lawyer went to a higher court and had them take another look at it, because clearly that was a bad ruling. So now the federal judge in a higher court has now reversed that ruling of the lower court. Nick Sandman's case can move forward against the Washington Post for defamation, and I expect that he'll be successful in that case. I really do. I can't imagine how he could not be. He is a minor. You cannot, a major newspaper could not go after a minor, hit him with a false attack, and then not correct it once they understand that they've made the mistake. It just can't happen. Okay, so I'm glad that is moving forward. And on another case that we've been talking about for the past 2 or 3 days, where we learned that this Obama-appointed judge, Beryl Howell, is already responsible for many bad rulings in the Manafort case, and other cases have been going on for the last couple of years relating to Russiagate. This judge, of course, was going to allow the Penguin, Jerry Nadler, to get a hold of this grand jury information. Now, not all of it, but specific pieces of grand jury information was going to be forwarded over to Jerry Nadler. As I said, I suggested that I can't imagine the DOJ will not fight that. And of course, that's exactly what we learned today is going to happen. The DOJ has appealed the court order to provide the grand jury information to the Penguin. The original judge said that the reason she made that ruling is because it's essentially an official. Nancy Pelosi came out and announced it's an official impeachment hearing. But it's not an official impeachment hearing, really. It's being conducted by one party, by one committee, in a secret setting. And of course, we know all the other particulars. The minority party cannot cross-examine witnesses. They cannot they cannot request witnesses. They cannot get certain documents. They cannot see certain things. There's a lot of questions with Schiff himself being compromised. There's just a lot of problems with it. It was never done with a full vote in the House. It's not a trial in the Senate. I mean, this rule saying that you could, because it's very rare that you ever have grand jury information released, but it's very rare. But in the case of a trial in the Senate for an impeachment hearing, they will do it on relevant information. But this is not a trial in the Senate. It's not even a full impeachment in the House. So this is why I say this is a horrible ruling, and I'm glad that the DOJ is going to appeal this, and I think if they lose, they should go to the Supreme Court, all the way to the Supreme Court if they have to, because it sets a very bad precedent. And it's just wrong. It's just wrong. So anyway, that is good news as well. We also have Dick Morris being interviewed on a radio program this morning. Many of you are familiar with Dick Morris. Of course, he's known as a very, very talented political strategist. He's single-handedly pretty much credited with being able to get Bill Clinton reelected after having 11 counts against him and being impeached. He still managed to advise Slick Willie well enough to get him reelected. And he's ran many successful political campaigns, including Boris Yeltsin, out of Bill Clinton's Oval Office, by the way. So yeah, he's a pretty smart tactician, political guy, and he was on a radio show this morning, and he said that Hillary thinks that God put her on earth to run for president. He says that she will only do it if Biden drops out. He says that she wants it, she's planning on it, and she will do everything she can to achieve it. Yes, I mean, I've been watching Hillary Clinton for the longest time, the Rotten Reverend. She is the most, when it comes to getting power, she's the most ambitious person I've ever seen when it comes to power. She will not let anything get in her way between her and the power that she believes that she deserves. You know, the things that she will do to people to get power is just extraordinary, including to friends and other people. I mean, you cannot get in between the Rotten Reverend Clinton and her power. She will plow you over. I don't care. Her own mother, you know. So I agree with Morris on this. And now he doesn't elaborate on the one point where he says, that she will only do it if Biden drops out. And I agree with that. And that's what I've been saying for a very long time. She would only throw her hat in the ring if Biden drops out. She's not going to, throw her hat in the ring with Biden there. I mean, that doesn't work. That wouldn't work. Okay, but the thing I've been saying that Morris does not say is I say that she's actively working to drive Biden out. She's actively working to drive Biden out. So when he says that she wants it, she's planning on it, and she'll do everything she can to achieve it, but she won't do it unless Biden drops out, he's making my point, which is she is behind the scenes working to drive Biden out. And so that's the only point there where I would probably, it's not that I disagree with Morris, it's just that he doesn't go as far as I do in saying that she's working to drive Biden out. Everything else is 100% in agreement. Now he also brings up another point, which is a very good point. He says that he's familiar and knows some people who are close to the Right Reverend Clinton, people in pretty much her inner circle. And he says that he knows that, and he's known this for quite some time, that people in her inner circle think that the one thing that scares her most and why she's been so hesitant not to throw her hat in the ring and why she's remained on the sidelines so long is because she is terrified of the Me Too movement. The Me Too movement scares her to death because of her husband, and not just because of Slick Willie, but because of the way that she defended all his accusers. That's all public record, and if someone really wants to, they can produce every bit of that information. It's all there. She did many, many interviews back in the day with news organizations where she trashed all these women who were accusing Slick Willie. She also, there's also video that was I haven't seen it in many years, but there is video out there with a couple of the thugs that she hired to go after these women to terrorize them. And of course, there's stories that have been written about it and everything else. So there's plenty of information out there. But it is funny that when I read this from Morris, it made me think, I haven't seen Slick Willie. Normally he keeps a pretty public profile, but I have not seen Slick Willie out there in months, really. It's been months since I've seen him out there prominently making a speech or appearing with her or stumping for a candidate or anything else. It's almost like in the last several months, 3 or 4 months since these primaries started, that Slick Willie has been put in the closet. They're keeping him as far away in the shadows and out of the media spotlight as possible. And this would certainly tell you that would back up what Morris is saying, that the Right Reverend Clinton knows Biden has to be gone, but he says she's terrified of Me Too. Well, if you just see the Right Reverend Clinton alone, then you can probably, maybe the Me Too stuff doesn't come up. But every time you see Slick Willie, the Me Too people come out of the woodwork. And that's what terrifies her. She doesn't know how the Me Too crowd will handle it if she throws her hat in the ring. Because if they come out and jump all over her the very day that she comes out, if the Me Too crowd comes out and hits her hard, she's done in one day. She can't survive a major attack by the Me Too movement, and she doesn't want to be humiliated to throw her hat in the ring and then 24 hours later to have to bail out because the Me Too movement just shredded her. So that is what Morris is suggesting, and I think that's very, very likely the case. Well, disappointing news from across the pond. I know people over in the UK must be just pulling their hair out. I sympathize and empathize with how you must feel over there. Boris said that he would rather be, rather be found dead in a ditch than go for an extension, but that's exactly what apparently has happened. It looks like they've now got a 3-month extension. I don't understand this. If you can't get a deal after 3 years, what's 3 more months going to do? I don't know. I'm not an expert on UK politics, but it just would seem to me that the best thing that they could do right now is to have a general election. Have a general election, let a new parliament come in and make the call. And that seems to me to be the way to go. There's a lot of strategies there. I know Nigel Farage likes that idea. I can imagine Farage. I haven't looked at his response yet, but I'm sure as soon as I do, I'm sure he's going apeshit over this. This cannot make him happy at all. The Brexit people must be furious, and I'm not sure politically how this works for Boris Johnson. I mean, he was so adamant that, hey, I'm leaving on the 31st, come hell or high water. It's either a deal or a no deal. And here he is going along. Now, I know he sent that letter, and I know his hand was forced by the Parliament. I understand this. They wrote that letter. And so he sends the letter to the EU, and he doesn't sign it. He doesn't sign it. So unless Boris Johnson has something up his sleeve to do in the last 24, 48 hours, he's got some legal maneuver that he's going to pull out of the deck here at the 12th hour, the 11th hour on the 31st, and just do a hard Brexit, and just blow everybody's mind. But at this point, it looks like he's accepting a 90-day extension. So, all that does is lead to another 90-day extension, and another, and another, and another, until they eventually have some kind of another referendum, another vote, which doesn't give you a clean Brexit option. It'll give you 2 or 3 different Brexit options, none of them good, or stay in the EU. It'll be set up so that a real Brexit cannot happen. This has always been the situation, and I just don't know how much more people over in the UK can stand before things start getting kind of hairy over there. I wouldn't be surprised to see protests tomorrow. This thing's just it's a mess, and I feel bad. It's kind of the same thing we feel here on this side of the pond. We're trying to get some justice for what happened in 2016, but we clearly see it's not easy, and it's certainly not easy to get Brexit, obviously. We have Biden calling Trump an idiot on 60 Minutes. I don't know what to think. I mean, quid pro quo Joe calling someone else an idiot. I mean, that's just, that's hard to explain. But we do have another interesting piece of information today. As you know, yesterday there was a correction that we did here on TowerGate, a correction on this issue with James Baker, because Sidney Powell had talked about this character James Baker being involved and being the one who gave information about the Flynn Kislyak phone call to David Ignatius. And then we find out that she was actually talking about another Baker, not the same James Baker that we thought. We thought General Counsel James Baker. But it turns out this is another James Baker, who is the guy over at the Office of Net Assessment at the Pentagon, which is where Stephen Halper worked and where he got the money. So it's likely that this Colonel James Baker, who's the actual James Baker, who's alleged by Sidney Powell to have provided the information to the fake news reporter David Ignatius about the Flynn Kislyak phone call. We're learning now that this James Baker, this Colonel James Baker at the Office of Net Assessment at the Pentagon, is a good friend of John Brennan, Mr. Potato Head. And that's important because there is a link. There is the missing link in a way that connects Brennan to Halper. Because remember, Halper is working for the Office of Net Assessment at the Pentagon. He's been given, in the past 12 months, $400,000. In the past 2.5 to 3 years, over $1 million. And this is probably the money that's being used not to go in Halper's pocket, but rather, some of it obviously went into his pocket, but some of that money is being allocated to him to use to carry out his work, which he's clearly working for Brennan through this guy Baker. It's just, I'm connecting dots here. I don't have the 100% facts in front of me, but I'm connecting dots. If Halper is working for the Office of Net Assessment and he's in the business of setting up Flynn, setting up Papadopoulos, he tried to set up Josh Miller. He may have been involved in the setup of Caputo and Stone using this other character, this other dude, Henry Greenberg. All these things would probably require some money to pay these people. And it's likely that this person, Colonel James Baker, is the one who authorized the money to Halper, and he likely did it on behalf of Brennan, because Brennan is friends with Baker, and Halper works for Baker at the Office of Net Assessment, and he's the one who did all the luring of Papadopoulos and Flynn and others. So here we have kind of a missing link filled in. The question I always had was, who was Halper working for? FBI? Was he working for CIA? Was he working for UK intelligence? Who was the guy running the fat man, Halper? Well, now we know that John Brennan was very good friends with this Colonel James Baker, who was essentially Halper's boss, or the person who would be the one who would contract Halper and provide him with the funds through the Office of Net Assessment. So here we have another Mr. Potato Head connection to the coup. Not looking good for Mr. Potato Head. And another thing, Mr. Potato Head looked pretty nervous on that interview on CNN the other day. And, a lot of people are saying, yeah, this is going to go all the way to Obama. Yeah, it's going to go all the way to Obama. But let me tell you what, when Obama is questioned about all this, you know what he's going to say? Obama's just going to say, hey, because you have Clapper out there saying, yeah, hey, whatever we did it because the president directed us to do it. This was the president directing us to do this investigation. But what Obama's going to say, he's someone who says, hey, yeah, based on the information I was getting from Brennan, Clapper, and Comey, any president would have had to have ordered them, directed them to investigate. Any president would have directed them to investigate had that president been given the information that Clapper and Brennan and Comey were throwing at Obama. Doesn't give Obama a free pass. I don't think he's naive, and I don't at all. I think he's totally up to his eyeballs in the coup. But I'm just saying purely from a defensive point of view, Obama has got a pretty good defense on that, not on other things, and on the overall plot he doesn't really, and I think this will be blown up anyway, but his initial reaction will certainly be, well, Clapper, hey, the information, I made a decision based on the information I'm getting from Clapper, Brennan, and Comey. So while Clapper, Brennan, and Comey may try to push it off and say, hey, we were just doing what Obama told us, yeah, you were doing what Obama told you to do based on the garbage that you gave him. Now, that's one way to look at it. The other way to look at it is they all knew what they were doing, and now they're just trying to cover their asses. That's really the actual truth, So getting back here real quick just to Pelosi for a second. Pelosi, of course, very upset because Trump didn't notify her prior to the Baghdadi raid, and she says that she's mad, and she says Trump notified Russia before he told Democrats about the Baghdadi raid because he's a Putin stooge. Once again, this just shows that Pelosi is either terribly partisan, hack, nasty woman, or she's dumber than a football bat. Because obviously there was no need for Pelosi to know, and the more people you know, the better better chance you have of compromising in a very difficult operation that could get people killed. Especially people who hate you, who are trying to impeach you, who might try to just throw a wrench in your spokes and screw up your plan. And you certainly wouldn't tell the bug-eyed fool. He's the biggest leaker in the District of Criminals. But this is really obvious, and Pelosi should know better, although she might be either too drunk or too stupid or senile at this point to realize it. But there was no need to tell Pelosi. But there was a need to tell Russia, obviously, because the corridor that they were flying their mission through goes right through areas where Russia, Turkey, and Syria, the actual Syrian government army, all have anti-aircraft. They have regular aircraft flying around. They got anti-aircraft. So if they detect aircraft coming through this corridor, they're likely to launch on it. It could be the Russians, could be the Turks, could be the Syrian army. So obviously they had to contact these people and tell them, hey, here is where we're going to be going. Here's about what time we're going to be going. We're conducting a mission. So please do not fire on us. And so he had to contact Russia and get their blessing, or at least always tell them, hey, don't fire on our. I don't know if they asked. I'm probably told them, hey, we're coming through this corridor at about this time. Do not fire on us. And I'm sure that was the message that was sent to Turkey, to Syria, regular army, and also to Russia. So that's the reason he contacted Russia. More than anything else. I'm sure he would rather have not have contacted any of them people to let them know about what he was doing, but he had to because they have anti-aircraft units there, as well as aircraft and soldiers and things and such, and he was trying to protect the mission. So Pelosi's an idiot. Speaking of idiots, we got that idiot Clapper saying that killing Baghdadi makes us less safe because he says it could galvanize ISIS. Oh yeah, don't defeat the enemy, don't kill the enemy because it might make him mad. This guy is a freaking idiot. A freaking idiot. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll be back tomorrow for more TowerGate. You guys have a good day. Bye.